This episode contains adult themes and is not appropriate for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
Hello, the world. This is They Will Kill, a true crime podcast. I'm Sadie-Eck.
And I'm Courtney-Eck.
And we are excited to be here with you today.
I hope everybody's in a mood to be super bummed out. Woo! Because this one is a bummer.
Good. Yeah. It's a problem with this
This one's a super bummer. This is one
okay.
that's really going to stretch your reaction vocabulary because it's a hella bummer.
All right. So we can all agree if I just sit here quietly, it's because I have run out of words to describe that I'm really sad.
Yes, it is the hardest thing about doing this, reacting to horrible things.
Okay.
In an interesting way.
Well, let's go. Let's do it.
Alrighty. So tonight I'm going to talk about two cases, actually. And both of these cases revolve around avoidable hospital deaths.
Oh, no.
I know. If that doesn't give you the damn heebie-jeebies, I don't know what. So I do want to say real quick that this episode is dedicated to our listener, Nicole. I actually originally posted this first case I'm going to talk about on our Instagram just as a post to kind of talk about this horrible thing that happened to this woman. And Nicole read it as a new episode and was like, "Oh, I'm so glad you're doing this case." And I was like, well, you know what? Why not? Why not go ahead and do it as a case and not just a post? So thank you, Nicole, for being vocal, for interacting with us. And as a result, here's the case of Anna Brown. On September 21st, 2011, 29-year-old Anna Brown checked into the emergency room of St. Mary's Health Center in St. Louis, Missouri, complaining of severe pain in her legs to the point that she was having extreme difficulty walking. She had recently sprained her ankle and had already been to 2 other hospitals that week to seek treatment for the pain she'd been experiencing in her legs since. Unfortunately, by entering that emergency room on that day, she set in motion a chain of events that would result in her untimely and totally avoidable death by the hands of the people whose only jobs were to protect her. Anna was one of 10 children and had her first child when she was 18. She had a daughter 9 years later, and raising the 2 on her own became exponentially harder when her home was destroyed by a tornado on New Year's Eve 2010.
What?
I know.
That's awful.
She was able to relocate, but soon after that, she lost her job at a sandwich shop, and all of her utilities were turned off, leaving she and her children living in squalor and struggling to get by.
No.
You guys, it's very hard to be poor.
Very, very
It's very
hard.
expensive to be poor. It's the worst.
Yep.
Quote, in April, a state children's division representative found Anna's toilet filled with feces. Burn marks scarred the floors and sinks where Brown had used small fires to stay warm. One refrigerator could not be opened. Insects and rotting food filled another, according to the state reports. Quote, Anna was not lucid and seemed confused as Berkeley police arrested her for paternal neglect. The courts awarded legal custody of the kids to the Children's Division. They told Anna's mother she could have custody of the children, but her daughter Anna would not be permitted to stay with them. Anna was arrested for paternal neglect and her home was condemned. When Anna was released from prison, she had nowhere to go, and so she lived between the streets and 4 homeless shelters over a period of 4 months.
Man.
I know. Well, and I can understand if she was arrested for abuse, like physical or emotional or mental abuse. I could understand them wanting to keep her from her children, but she was quote unquote neglecting them because she was poor.
Right. No, we need to stop punishing people for being poor.
Right. And so then to keep her from shelter,
right.
It's
crazy.
Where she could maybe go live with her mother, get back on her feet, spend time with her children, it just doesn't make any sense. Mm-hmm. At first, she was allowed to visit her kids at her parents', but her visits were eventually terminated when she told her children they didn't need to listen to their grandparents and called the police to report they were being abused. Police found no evidence of abuse, and Anna was allowed to continue to see her children, but only during supervised visits at the Children's Division of Family Services. Anna began the process of reuniting with her children and passed 2 drug tests, but refused to take others, questioning why they needed to see more when she'd passed the first ones. Quote, "She felt that she had passed them, so there was no point in doing them again," her mother said. The court soon ordered a psychological evaluation for Anna to find out if she had cognitive, developmental, behavioral, or mental illnesses, but it came back inconclusive. The court requested additional tests to see if she'd benefit from medication or a doctor's care, but she refused, not understanding why she needed to take more tests when she'd completed the first round. So it just sounds like she's like, but I already did that. Why do why do you keep asking me to do it again? I already did it. Not understanding it was a different round of tests. Luckily, she joined the St. Louis Empowerment Center on her own, which was a drop-in center for the mentally ill. Quote, "It was like a light bulb went on when she heard others tell their stories," said Kevin Dean, a peer specialist at the center. She was just starting to make progress. Her caseworkers reported that she was quick-witted and great at breaking the ice in group sessions with her funny comments, and she was starting to come out of the fog she'd been in for so many months. Unfortunately, around this time, Anna badly sprained her ankle while walking in a ditch, and the last time the Empowerment Center staff saw her in August, she couldn't walk up the stairs. On September 13th, Anna was admitted to St. Mary's for treatment of her ankle and underwent an EKG, some radiology services, lab work, and cardiovascular services. She stayed for 3 days and, quote, "She wasn't very eager to go home, but we do all we can to take care of the whole patient, and we want to make sure that we do not push someone out the door as soon as they come here," said SLU spokeswoman Laura Keller. She said there was no indication of a blood clot in Brown's leg at that time. Her sister Crystal picked her up from the hospital and dropped her off downtown, where Anna requested she be left. Later, Anna's mother insisted Crystal go back to find her and bring her home because it was pouring rain, but Crystal was unable to find her. 4 days later, Anna saw her children for the last time under supervision and was on crutches for their final visit. On September 20th, Anna went to St. Louis University Hospital complaining of severe pain in her knee and ankle. They didn't find anything on the x-ray of her knees, so she was given pain medication and released to go home. Anna refused to leave, insisting the hospital take her pain more seriously, and police were finally called around 5 a.m. Anna said she wanted to be transported to a better hospital, but refused to go in an ambulance. She then wheeled herself to a pediatric hospital and asked for care.
Man.
I know. Doctors said she reported experiencing tenderness in her legs, but said they couldn't treat her as it was a hospital for children. She insisted she still needed treatment, and so an ambulance was called and transported her to St. Mary's. So these are 2 different hospitals, just to be clear. St. Louis University and then St. Mary's, which is where she started. She arrived back at St. Mary's around 11:45 a.m. Her ankle was swollen, and she was given ultrasounds, which came back negative for blood clots. A nurse claimed she saw Anna stand up at one point, and a social worker gave her a list of phone numbers for shelters and transportation. She returned 8 hours later, this time complaining of abdominal pain only. She again refused to let them discharge her, but was discharged at 7 a.m. Around 10 a.m., a police officer was at St. Mary's responding to another call when a security guard approached him and said a woman was claiming she, quote, did not receive adequate medical attention and did not have to leave. The officer found her in a wheelchair outside of the hospital where she claimed she was waiting for a ride. Police said she must remain outside of the hospital or he would arrest her for trespassing. Quote, "You can't arrest me. I know my rights. I can't even stand up," Anna yelled, according to police. The officer then claimed he waited 3 hours for a doctor to examine Anna to determine if she was medically well enough to go to jail.
What?
Yes.
What?
And I don't know if, she went back into the hospital and then they're like, well, we're going to take you away. But regardless, she sat there for 3 hours.
Wow.
And so did the police officer. A doctor issued a, quote, fit for confinement report at 12:30 p.m., and Anna was taken into custody.
Mm-mm.
Inspectors later... Go ahead.
I
know.
Like that officer had nothing better to do.
Right.
Than to sit there for 3 hours.
Right.
Like, God, give me a fucking break, man. Like, come on.
Do you know what you could have done in that time? Maybe researched mental health facilities,
Right.
researched homelessness crisis,
Right.
you know,
Blood clot treatments.
intervened, been a mediator between the hospital and this person who's clearly in distress.
Right. What do you need? Can I get you
Yeah.
a warm bath?
Yeah. Like, she's sitting there. She's clearly in pain. She's been in for treatment recently.
Right.
You know, she's not doing anything wrong.
Right.
She just won't leave.
Well, and the idea that you could trespass in a hospital when you're demanding care is just
Exactly.
bonkers. Like,
Exactly.
who's to decide?
Right.
Like, that's the whole purpose.
Yeah. It's
And to be arrested for it is
to be arrested. It's fucking bullshit.
I'm not happy
No.
right now.
No. It gets much worse. Inspectors later found that the police reports didn't line up with the report from the county medical examiners in the following ways. Police and medical examiner reports, based on interviews from that day, quote St. Mary's staff as saying Brown did complain of leg pain on her return visit, not just abdominal pain. A St. Mary's nurse told the medical examiner that Brown was still complaining of leg and abdominal pain at 12:40 p.m. Quote, she was advised that she had already been treated and needed to leave the hospital. Police said the doctor's, quote, fit for confinement decision was made at 1:20 p.m., not 12:30 p.m. Police also said Brown yelled, quote, my legs don't work, as they wheeled her after the exam. She reportedly swore at the officers on the way to the station and insisted they produce a wheelchair to wheel her into the jail as she couldn't put any pressure on her legs at that point. Instead of finding a wheelchair to help transport her, police dragged her into the station by her arms. They listed, quote, suspected drug use as Brown's physical state and, quote, unknown leg pain under medical notes.
No.
Police then carried her into a cell by her arms and legs, and her condition continued to worsen. She's seen moaning and moving on surveillance tapes until around 2 p.m., still clearly in a ton of pain. Quote, a dispatcher with East Central Dispatch zoomed a surveillance camera in and out on Brown because it was, quote, difficult to determine if the prisoner was still breathing later due to the pixelation grain on his monitor, police reported.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's, God. Oh,
Do your job.
I don't have the words. I want to say lots of curse words right now.
We have lost so desperately lost track of the whole point of being a human being on this earth in this country, right? It's to take care of each other. It's to make sure that we as a society stay safe and productive, and police are employed to take care of, to make us safe. Hospitals are employed to make us healthy. And why do you think that you have to punish people? You know?
Right. It's unbelievable.
Unbelievable. Even if she had shot a bunch of people in the hospital, but was in some kind of distress as a prisoner, you still have to make sure she's alive.
Right.
Right? You
Yes.
just got to get up and walk in the room and check if she's breathing.
I don't even.
Zoomy. Nope, can't tell. Just 15 minutes later, a jail worker found her unconscious and unresponsive. Responders tried to revive her with a defibrillator and CPR, and she was rushed back to St. Mary's by ambulance. Medics were unable to revive Anna, and just hours after being determined fit for confinement, Anna Brown was pronounced dead.
God. I mean, like, seriously, what the fuck?
A conversation was recorded between the fire chief and an officer as they packed up the emergency equipment in Anna's cell. Quote, we got a fit for confinement on her a half an hour ago. I mean, literally a half hour ago we brought her in here. Where at? Hogan asked. St. Mary's. What was, any problems at all? No, they thought she was a drug seeker. Well, that could very well be, and that's a shame. Police Chief Major Roy Wright defended the officers, saying, quote, a lot of times people don't want to stay in jail and will claim to be sick, he said. We depend on medical officials to tell us they're okay. Fair. That's a fair point. Similarly, the dispatch manager said, quote, it's not unusual to have someone lay there lethargic, he said. If he felt it was more severe, he would have called. Ultimately, I know, I get it. I mean, I'm sure you go to prison, you're not bouncing around, but they dragged her in there. It's a
Right.
very different scenario.
Well, and she was so lethargic that he couldn't tell if she was breathing. It's
Right.
not just like laying around and not wanting, like,
Right.
he thought she wasn't breathing.
Well, and they placed her on the floor. They didn't put her on a cot or a bunk or whatever. They brought her in there and they laid her right in the middle of the floor, and there she
She's
stayed.
not
And
garbage.
she died 15 minutes later. Yeah, I know. Ultimately, staff at St. Mary's failed to diagnose deep vein thrombosis or blood clots in her legs, which is a treatable but very life-threatening condition. Once Anna was in her jail cell, the clots broke loose and traveled to her lungs, suffocating her. All 9 of Anna's siblings met up at St. Mary's and waited 45 minutes for a doctor to finally inform them that their sister was dead.
You are kidding me.
No. Quote, "They told us she came in from the jail unresponsive, and we don't know what happened," Anna's sister, Crystal Brown, recalled. Anna's mother was informed that she can't access Anna's medical records without proving a legal right to them, which is so fucked up.
What?
Yeah, and refused to give up. So she tried to get her medical records, and they were like, prove it. She's her mother.
Seriously.
Your mother should have permanent legal access to your medical
Seriously.
records, right?
Well, there's got to be like HIPAA rules that include like when someone dies, this is who gets the records.
Right.
Like, should have access to them, especially in case. Ugh.
I know. Quote, "When you lose a child, it's like a part of you will never, ever get back," Davis said. "It's like a part of your soul. A part of you is totally gone. And when you don't know why, you keep wondering. You just keep guessing." Anna's diagnosis was sort of puzzling because she didn't fit a lot of the criteria for people who develop DVT. Generally, people are immobile, but Anna was on the move constantly due to her houselessness. Factors that could have led to the blood clots were her weight and the ankle trauma, obviously being the big contributing factor. Quote, "The body responds to trauma by revving up the coagulation system to prevent the individual from bleeding to death from the trauma," Dr. Samuel Goldhaber said. "But half the time, DVT is silent and there are no symptoms whatsoever." Quote, "In most cases, diagnosed patients take blood thinners and walk out of the hospital," said Dr. Elliot Hott, an emergency medical expert for Johns Hopkins Medicine. "Relatively small periods of immobility can potentially cause DVT," Hott said. "Not every test is 100%, but if you do the test and you see the veins you're supposed to, you shouldn't miss it."
I mean, like, I'm not a doctor, but sure sounds like she had blood clots. Like, if, you know, like as you're telling the story, that's, and that they, yeah.
Yeah, there's something is wrong.
Right.
And even if there's, do the things that could save her life. And if those things don't work, then be like, okay, you really have to go.
Right.
You don't have to give her pain medication,
Right.
but you should take some additional steps
Right.
and choose some treatments to see
Right.
if her pain goes away.
She shouldn't go to jail.
The last thing you should do is send her to jail. So the Davis family filed a lawsuit that accused St. Mary's of wrongful death, false arrest, and imprisonment, and the city eventually paid the family $568,750.
Not enough.
No. Anna's mother took custody of her 2 children, and they seemed to be doing well, all things considered. At the time the article was written, Anna's son was put into counseling to help him cope with her passing and was earning A's and B's in school. Her daughter would often kiss the photo of her mother on a t-shirt that her grandmother wore. And that is the first story. The story of the fucking psychotic, awful, preventable, abusive death of Anna Brown.
That's so awful.
So awful. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. And I know.
Fix things, man.
Yeah, we gotta fix things, man. So the next story is the equally, maybe even more horrifying story of Edith Rodriguez. In the middle of the night on May 9th, 2007, Jose Prado brought his girlfriend, 43-year-old Edith Rodriguez, to the emergency room of Los Angeles' Martin Luther King Jr. Harbor Hospital. She was in severe distress and complaining of stomach pain. Edith had been to the ER 3 times in 3 days for her pain and had previously been discharged with pain medication. On this occasion, video cameras show Edith on the floor in the fetal position, kicking her feet in agony and vomiting blood while 6 staff members watched or walked around her without offering any medical assistance.
You are kidding me.
Vomiting blood.
What is happening?
At one point, the janitor mopped up her blood while she continued screaming and writhing on the floor.
What?
Yes. Quote, staff members walked past the patient or worked to clean the floor next to her without interacting with her.
What?
One staff person was observed sitting behind the financial registration window and had a view of the patient in the lobby.
Wow.
She just sat there.
Why is this happening?
It's like a horror show.
Yes.
It's a horror show.
It's really like a, what? Yeah.
Yeah, it's like in
American
a horror
show.
Yeah.
Like this is something that what's that one called?
American Horror Story. Yes.
This is an episode from that.
Yeah, or
like
like
going on?
A bad dream where everyone's just ignoring you while you're very clearly dying in a hospital on the floor.
Right. Wow.
At 1:30 a.m., when Rodriguez was, quote, kicking with her feet on the floor, 2 staff members looked at the patient and then walked back through the door to an area within the ER. When it became clear to Jose that Edith was not going to receive help and was getting worse, he called 911 to seek additional help.
Oh, no.
He begged them to send someone to help her and was told repeatedly that they can't send emergency services to a hospital because she would just be taken to a hospital.
Wow.
911, state emergency. Bueno, ¿habla español? Okay. Oiga. Hold on a moment, hold on. I'm trying to get an interpreter for you, sir. Un momento. Yes, can you find out what his emergency is, please? Okay. My wife is dying and the nurses don't want to help her out. Okay, what do you mean she's dying? She's vomiting blood. Okay, they're watching her, there and they're just not doing anything. Paramedics are not going to pick him up or pick his wife up from a hospital because she's already at one. He needs to contact the county police officers at the security desk there.
Edith and Jose remained in the ER, and sometime later, another patient called 911 after watching staff ignore her for too long.
What's emergency? It's a lady on the ground, and here in the emergency room, and they are overlooking her. What would you want me to do for you, ma'am? Send an ambulance out here to take her somewhere where she can get medical help. Okay, you're at the hospital, ma'am. You have to contact them. They're having a problem. They won't help us. Down on the ground. Well, ma'am, I cannot do anything for you for the quality of the hospital there. This line is for emergency purposes only. It's an emergency. It's not an emergency. It is not an emergency, ma'am. It is. It is not emergency. To see how they're treating her. Okay, well, that's not a criminal thing. This line, 911, is used for emergency purposes only. Life-threatening emergencies. It is not. Okay? Hey, God strikes you, too, for acting the way you do. No, negative, ma'am. You're the one.
What the fuck?
Yes.
No, you are. Like, what the fuck?
Right.
This you don't get to argue with people, sir.
Mm-hmm.
And
no, who do you call? Who helps you?
Well, like,
nobody
apparently.
What
Nobody.
do you do?
Nothing.
Call the president? Go find a different doctor? That is
don't know.
The scariest scenario I can possibly imagine.
No. Well, and I assume that they were like pleading for help and they were just not doing it.
Yeah.
Like how is that possible? I
don't know. I mean, I'm assuming she, was being obnoxious or, just like rubbed them the wrong way. I don't know.
So what?
No, I mean, it's not an excuse, but I'm assuming that was,
something happened.
Well, and I'll tell you a little bit more about the hospital too, because this is not an isolated incident.
Oh God, I'm thinking, and this isn't to take away from her experience at all. I was really sick once and went to immediate care and I had like bronchitis or something, but I was really, really sick and I needed help. Yeah. And I remember I was in the waiting room for hours.
Yeah.
And I would get up and I'd be like, I am dizzy. Like, I don't think I can sit anymore. Is there somewhere I can just lay down and wait? And she was like, nope, can't do it. Just got to wait your turn. There's more serious things happening back here. And I was like, okay. They just make you feel so small and helpless. And
yes.
Like, I was on the verge of tears by the time that somebody finally took me and gave me antibiotics. You know,
it's just like endless stories of, and we'll talk about this at the end of this too, but just endless stories of people not being cared for properly, not being
awful.
believed.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to this fucking nightmare. So at another point, police found Edith crying out for help on the benches in front of the hospital and brought her in to the triage nurse, Linda Rutten, who refused to escalate her emergency to get her help more quickly.
Why?
Not only did the nurse not help Edith, she complained to police that she'd been causing a disturbance in the waiting room, so police ran a computer search, realized she had an outstanding warrant for a parole violation related to a drug charge, and decided to bring her into custody.
Shut up.
Can you believe that?
No.
This woman's vomiting blood.
Wow.
And they're like, well, can't, the law's the law. Better bring her in.
Arrest all of them. Arrest everybody.
Seriously.
I'm so disgusted.
And then I'm going to let them lay on the floor and I'm not even going to check on them. Soon after they took her into custody, she stopped breathing and died of a perforated bowel.
Jesus, Lord, help me.
A perforated bowel. Can you even imagine how fucking painful that is?
No. I couldn't sit in the waiting room with bronchitis. Like, no.
No.
I just, please.
At first, quote, letters of expectation were issued to most of the staff members who neglected to offer Edith any medical care or seek out alternative options for services who could. The letters outlined how the staff were expected to react in the future and were the only form of discipline issued to the staff who watched Edith clearly suffering and eventually dying.
What?
They wrote them strongly worded letters.
They didn't, that was it. Please tell me they did more.
Well, the janitor was, quote, verbally counseled, and the triage nurse was put on leave, and eventually she resigned. That was...
Arrest her.
Yes.
She's negligent. Like, arrest her right this second.
Take away her credentials at the very minimum.
At least.
At the very minimum. So King Harbor was cited by the federal government for violating the Emergency Medical Treatment and Active Labor Act, which requires hospitals to screen and stabilize all patients seeking emergency care. Quote, in a written response, hospital officials said they had made changes such as adding training for emergency room staff, improving methods for logging patients seeking treatment, and posting additional signs advising patients of their right to a medical exam. She knew she had a right to a medical exam.
Yeah.
That's why she was sitting outside of the hospital screaming for someone to help her.
I just can't even.
They also claimed hospital staff would start doing sweeps of the waiting room to make sure all patients were being tended to, and that the police would need to get medical clearance before taking patient into custody.
Wow.
Quote, it's really hard to explain how something this bad could happen, John R. Cochran, the health department's chief deputy director, told the board of supervisors at a briefing. Nobody faulted the policies in place. Nobody faulted the procedures in place. What they faulted was the person who failed to do the work, he said. And not very much. They didn't fault them very well.
No.
As it turns out, Edith's case wasn't the first instance of patient mistreatment or neglect, not by a long shot. For the 3.5 years before Edith made her fatal trip to the King Harbor emergency room, the hospital had closed its trauma center, disciplined hundreds of workers, slashed services significantly, and reduced its inpatient beds from 200 to just 48.
Wow.
Because they couldn't get it together. So they just kept reducing the number of services that they were allowed to perform because they were performing them so terribly.
Wow, that's terrifying.
Right? Quote, S. Kimberly Beishy, the state's Health and Human Services secretary, said she had thought the hospital was making a lot of progress toward correcting its problems, at least until Edith's death. Quote, we are also taken aback by the recent incidences at MLK Harbor, Beishy said. It does call into question the extent to which meaningful progress has been in fact made.
Right.
After Edith died after being so blatantly ignored and neglected, officials began to wonder if more harm would be done by leaving the hospital open than it would be by closing it. Quote, when do the dangers associated with keeping the hospital open outweigh the dangers of this hospital closing, she asked. That's a very important balancing act.
Close it.
I just like, this is serving a community, you know? People
Right.
who need health care. But they're
Right.
like, we have to close it because they're killing people.
Right. Instead, they walk into this terrible dystopian future
Yeah.
of fucking hell.
It's just so hard. I mean, I know a very critical part of being a healthcare provider is compartmentalization. You have to be able to disassociate to a certain extent. You have to be able to compartmentalize because that is this very stressful job.
Right.
But I still think that is just level 90 crazy compartmentalization to just be able to just sit there and stare at a person who's clearly dying on your floor.
Well,
and not
it's
even
so
like
bad
come
that-
over and give her some ice or something, you know?
No, it's awful. Well, and like so bad that other people are calling 911.
Right.
Like it's
Right.
so bad.
Right.
That's not normal. That's
No.
not okay.
No. So this story does have a bit of a happy ending for once, and poor Edith's death was not for nothing. Thank God.
Thank God.
So historically, the Martin Luther King Jr. Hospital was opened as a response to the 1965 Watts riots, which occurred as a result of lack of services and resources in the historically low-income area. Quote, they needed jobs and they needed medical facilities in this area, said Alice Harris, a longtime Watts resident, who added that several children died from asthma-related symptoms simply because the closest medical care facility was too far away.
Oh, no.
Quote, if you want to kill a community, kill the medical care. That kills the community.
Yeah.
Initially, the hospital was a huge step forward for the suffering community who could finally seek medical attention in their own neighborhood instead of having to travel by ambulance to Torrance to receive treatment. But by the 2000s, the stories of the horrors of the once great hospital began to emerge and residents began to refer to the establishment as, quote, Killer King. Edith's death was the last straw for the rapidly declining hospital, and it was closed in 2007. And when I was researching this case, the LA Times did a huge series on the hospital. So they really exposed what was going on in there. It was
Thank God for journalists, man.
seriously. Quote, with the city closing it, it looked as if Martin Luther King had died again, Alice Harris said. That really hurt. It would. I mean, it's like
Yeah.
all these residents are suffering and dying and not being taken seriously and not receiving the care they need. And then you just close the hospital, you know? You're like, well, then you just don't get a hospital. Luckily, 8 years after Killer King was taken down, Watts received a new, smaller, but state-of-the-art hospital on the same campus the previous one had operated on. Quote, Dr. Mitchell Katz, director of Los Angeles County Department of Health Services, said the new MLK hospital is, quote, built on a completely different model than the old hospital. It's also one that was inspired by Obamacare. Quote, under the Affordable Care Act, one of the things that was recognized is that if you want to expand access, you have to also bring down the cost of health care, Katz said. The best way to do that is to provide people with the care they need in the right place at the right time. The new facility offers preventative care and services about 950 residents per day.
Wow.
Quote, we got something that Beverly Hills doesn't have, Alice Harris said. They don't have nothing that big and nothing that pretty. No. Edith's family also received a $3 million settlement from the hospital after her death. May the poor, tortured thing rest in peace.
It should have been like 300 million, but
I know.
take it.
I know.
Poor thing.
Poor thing. It is one of the scariest things I've ever heard, I think, honestly. I mean, you think about
Yes.
the terror of being alone and, you know, being and dying or being murdered or something, and you have no way to get help, but you're like, well, you know, this, I did my best and this is the end. But then to
Right.
be able to get to the place that is designed to save your life and to die there under
Yeah.
those circumstances is,
Not even die there, to be brought to, like, to be arrested.
well, yes.
Again, like,
yes. Like you're laying
yeah.
there, you're like, I'm obviously dying. I know I am dying. And the police are like, you have to come with us, ma'am. You have...
Yeah.
What?
The dispatcher is like, no, you are.
Oh, my God.
I just can't.
No. No, this it never should have. Those poor people.
No.
And the trauma of being the other people there that I can't do anything, and her poor boyfriend.
God.
So how often do people die of preventable deaths in hospitals? A lot. A lot. In 2016, researchers from Johns Hopkins Hospital published the results of a comprehensive study on medical errors, which estimated that medical errors result in 250,000 deaths each year. Mm-hmm. The Hopkins study was published May 3rd, 2016 in the BMJ. This estimate ranks medical malpractice as the third leading cause of death in the United States behind heart disease and cancer.
Wow.
Third.
That's astonishing.
Isn't it?
Yep.
I thought it would be like 75th or something. Third.
No.
So this next bit is just verbatim from Gash Law website. If you were to ask most medical professionals whether they consider themselves racist and whether racism affects how they treat their patients, they would most likely tell you racism plays no role in their medical practice. Multiple recent studies have shown subtle forms of racism that physicians, particularly white doctors experiencing professional burnout, exhibit toward Black and African American patients. These issues include a perception of Black patients as having higher pain tolerance and being more likely to engage in drug-seeking behaviors. Mm-hmm. The combination of those prejudices may lead physicians to not listen when African American patients complain of serious medical symptoms. This bias means that fewer Black patients receive proper referrals for early testing related to heart conditions. It can also lead to unnecessary physical suffering that can exacerbate other medical conditions when physicians won't prescribe adequate pain management. The Harvard Medical Practice Study found, quote, there were significant differences between hospitals that serve a predominantly minority population and other hospitals. That is, Blacks were more likely to be hospitalized at institutions with more adverse events and higher rates of negligence. So adverse events, obviously meaning they go in and they don't come out.
Right.
According to a 2002 study by the National Academy of Sciences Institute of Medicine, quote, a consistent body of research demonstrates that U.S. racial and ethnic minorities are less likely to receive even routine medical procedures and experience a lower quality of health services. Mm-hmm. The Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality, a division of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, found, quote, Blacks received poorer quality of care than whites in 43% of the core measures, and, quote, disparities in quality and access to care are growing wider in the Hispanic population. Mm. Racial and ethnic minorities are uninsured more often than non-Hispanic whites, a status that frequently results in less adequate care. A study by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation found that compared with the insured, those without health coverage who are hospitalized are more likely to receive fewer services, experience second-rate care, and die in the hospital.
So awful.
I know. And the hospital location with the highest proportion of negligent adverse events was the emergency department, where people without health insurance often go for primary care. Mm-hmm. And so, bottom line, you are all going to die of hospitals. Can you believe that shit?
Well, I mean, yes and no. I can't. I'm unfortunately, I have to say yes, because our healthcare system is so fucked.
Yes.
And our systemic racist problem is so fucked up. And,
yes.
I mean, I know they're finding that Black and brown people are dying so much more of COVID, and it's not because it's affecting them more.
Right.
As people, it's because they can't have access to medical care, and they're not believed, and they're not taken seriously, and
they have more underlying health conditions because they haven't been able to get treatment for them, and then paired with COVID is a death sentence. Yep. So
it's a big problem in the maternity section too. A huge problem. I know as a doula, it was a big thing that when I lived in Oregon, they were really trying to figure out. And it's a big problem all over the country. It's just a big problem, guys.
It's a big problem. And I applaud people who are healthcare professionals. I mean, especially right fucking now, but in general, that is a very difficult job. I just can't. My friends who are nurses or doctors, and we talk about the things they go through. Like, we have friends who are pediatric nurses in like terminal, they deal with terminal case, just things that I cannot begin to fathom, the stress and anxiety and trauma of doing that day in and day out. But also, healthcare professionals need to be given resources to perform their jobs adequately, and not get to the point where they can just stare at a woman vomiting blood and feel nothing, because they're so beat down and burnt out and desensitized to it that they just are like, she's just trying to get attention, or whatever was going through that woman's mind. Oh, there you go.
There you go, guys.
Well, babies, I'm sorry, but when I started reading more about it, I was like, ooh, this is a big, big, big fucking bummer, and it's definitely some shit that we need to be talking about. And I'm endlessly sorry for Anna and Edith's families. Like, just
so sorry.
Endlessly. It's sickening.
No, it's a complete nightmare. I can't even imagine. Like, I'm so sorry.
No. I will never. I listened to that podcast, Dr. Death. Did you ever listen to that one?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God. I had just like the bile rising up in my throat the whole time, because it's
so awful.
It scared me so much. Stuff like that just scares me in a different way, and not a fun, tingly way.
Right.
And that guy, he was just actually like a psycho. He was a psychopath that convinced people he was a doctor to mutilate them and kill them. Yeah. But this shit, it's just spooky. It just scares me. It scares me to think that I can go into the hospital and I won't be taken care of.
Right. Well, I saw it. I mean, I didn't see it a lot. I wouldn't say as a doula, but my main job, I felt most often, was to just sit and watch and pay attention and advocate in the way of, oh wait, actually, what like, can we take a pause for a minute? Even like, we don't need to rush into things. Let's talk about it. And it's not that the doctors or nurses had ill will against the people I was working with, but the system's set up in a way to get it done and to go and go and go, and to not look at people as individuals as much. And so definitely, I found it was just my job to kind of be there and pay attention and make sure that these families were getting the care they deserved.
Yep. Because you assume that you don't know what's best. You assume that the doctors know.
Right. Well, we've been told. Happen. Right. Yeah. Right. They're the experts. Yep. I know. I say all the time that we need doulas in all realms of the hospital system. So absolutely, you just need somebody who comes in who knows the system, who isn't a part of the system, that can help you navigate through it to know that you're making the best choices for yourself and what your options are.
Yeah.
100%. That makes a huge difference.
100%. People need to be okay with advocating for themselves. I wish there is something, I had to Google it, but you can say, I think you just ask for it in writing. So if you're in the hospital and they're like, no, I don't think you need that. If you say to the doctor, okay, I would like for you to put that in writing, that you refuse me that treatment, then ta-da, you get your treatment real fast. So that's something clever to be aware of. I also find, like, I'm a skinny girl. I'm like a 12-year-old boy skinny. I've always been skinny. I will probably always be skinny. I have a really high metabolism, and I don't do anything, really. I mean, I work out because I have anxiety, but it doesn't take, it's not, I do not deserve a fucking gold star for being this skinny. Just my body. And I do find that doctors praise it all the time. They make assumptions about who I am and my lifestyle choices based on my body type. And I'm like, you of all people should know that every body is different. And like, you can come out with a big body and it's never going to be small.
Right.
Right.
Well, coming from a woman on the opposite end, that's always been plus size my whole life.
Yeah.
And I've had this opposite but similar reaction where they make assumptions on my lifestyle because of my size.
It's disgusting.
Yep.
It's disgusting. Like, well, you can tell that you are really healthy. I'm like, no, I'm not. I drink a lot, or whatever. I mean, I'll just say, okay, to get that Ativan prescription, not really. Right. I'm not trying to drug seek you guys. I really need it. But yeah.
It works in your favor. And for people that Yeah, it's just so fucked up that they look at you and perceive what they want to believe rather than
and that I'm more
out.
deserving of their care. You know, that I've tried harder in this world to be healthy, and so I am more deserving of their time and attention. Right. And it's like, that's fucking terrible. That's stupid, and I hate it. I hate it when it comes up, because I'm like, you don't know anything about me. And in fact, I could have some things that are really wrong with me that you're not even going to investigate because you assume that I'm healthy. Yeah. It's way worse in the opposite direction, but it is something that stands out to me every time I go in. And so if you are in the healthcare profession, I applaud you, because you're a fucking saint and I don't know how you
Badass.
do it. But, you know, in every area of all of our lives right now, I think we're all checking in with those internal biases that we have that we just cannot help. And so next time it comes up, please just take a pause and think, is this something that I need to explore more because I'm just annoyed, or I'm assuming something about this person based on these factors and I don't actually know anything about it and I need to investigate further. And, you know, why not try a series of things that could help this person? If those things don't work, then you can escalate the situation to calling a mental health professional, or, you know.
Sure.
And that's the other thing, like, call a mental institution. If somebody's just acting like a crazy person, like,
right.
you know, don't
Get
call
a
the
mental
police.
Health professional.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because then they could at least still be in a hospital under observation with somebody who's trained to take care of people who are in crisis, in medical crisis. You know, because if she is drug seeking, the other thing is she's probably going to fucking start to detox, which could also kill her.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Oy, 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 oy.
We love you guys, and
yes, we do.
Take care of each other.
Please.
If you need Sadie to doula for you,
I will. Call me. You got questions about your gallbladder?
Yeah.
I'll do my best.
Yeah.
You got a baby in that uterus? Definitely give me a call.
Yeah. Totally. And if you just need somebody to come in and be like, you don't fucking know her, and you better back up and get your ass back there and get her some blood thinner, I will do that. I will be so happy to do that. Oh my God.
Yeah. No, I've been thinking, I think it was on HBO. They did like a little mini documentary about Serena Williams. And she had blood clots after giving birth to her baby, and she couldn't get them to pay attention to her.
Oh my God.
And almost died. So if Serena Williams can't get proper medical care, like, that's what we're up against here, you guys.
That's a serious problem, let alone a woman coming in a little disheveled.
Right. Yeah.
From living on the streets. Oy, oy, oy.
Yep. So, well, thanks for doing that one, Court. It's so important.
Yeah. You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you for reacting in interesting ways, because that's the hardest part about this story.
I did my best.
Yep,
I'm the true hero in this situation.
I could hear the difference between your like ugh and ah and oh God. You really put some variations in there. You really mixed it up.
You know, I am a professional podcaster. Yes. If you have not noticed. I've been training for this my whole life.
That's right.
For 6 months.
Yeah. We should start a podcast reaction seminar. True crime podcast reaction seminar.
Right. I know. I could use that for sure.
Yeah.
We need to start a support group with other podcasters.
Yeah. It's like, what would you say to this sentence? A, nothing. B, son of a bitch. C.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. How many times can you say the same thing before your listeners turn your show off?
Yes, exactly. Probably one thing in our case.
Probably, yeah. Negative things. They just don't know. Anyway. Yeah. That's not true at all.
It's got very self-deprecating.
No.
Anyway, you guys, we love you, and
we love you so much.
We miss you, and oh my God, our giveaway is
giveaway
probably happening right now. Yes, it will be happening right now when this is recording. I'm going to launch it on Tuesday. I think we'll draw toward the end of the week.
Yep.
Look for the details on Instagram at
Twitter.
They Will Kill, Twitter at They Will Kill, Facebook at They Will Kill. You can go to our website, theywillkill.com, and you can always email us at theywillkillpodcast@gmail.com.
Rate, review, subscribe, please.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, AJ Bergantz, for your music.
We love you, AJ.
Love you. We do so much. Go check him out on Spotify, please.
Yeah.
And remember,
just if you see somebody struggling, do something if you can to relieve their suffering.
Please. Do it.
It's probably not that hard.
No, definitely not. We can at least try. You might not be able to take it away, but you can check in.
I think that trying to help people ease their suffering really goes a long way in easing someone's suffering.
Yes.
Even if you can't solve the problem in its entirety, like you just said, I think that sentiment just fucking ripples out into the universe exponentially and makes this place a better fucking place.
Couldn't agree more.
And certainly makes that person's that moment in their life better, especially if they're about to die. You know, be kind. Be kind. Be kind.
Yep.
Be kind.
Yep. We love you so much.
We love you too. We love you too.
We love you too.
Bye, babies.
See you on the other side.
Goodbye.
Bye.